It's safe to say a majority of us are terminally online. I've got multiple screens in front of me right now, and my online footprint is growing larger by the day. I'm sure, like me, you wouldn't mind a little extra security and the occasional anonymity. Luckily, today's sponsor, NordVPN, can give you that in spades. Most of you understand the power and protection a secure VPN can provide. Your IP is one of the most important and vulnerable pieces of your online footprint, and it really is just that much harder to find you online when your IP is posting from, say, Japan. But did you know that NordVPN is more than the most popular and fastest VPN on the planet? Sure, you'll never miss your favorite content on any of your streaming services ever again, but the benefits are deeper than that. NordVPN also helps you stay safe from malware with threat protection and the NordPass password manager. Nord keeps your passwords protected and hard to crack even when you're offline. They also offer a data breach scanner, so you'll be alerted before the damage is done. This premium feature will scan the web and inform you if your sensitive data information has been exposed. Peace of mind is worth so much to me personally, guys, and if it's worth it to you as well, and it should be, we have a link down below to get your NordVPN 2-year plan plus 4 months for free. And with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee, it's always risk-free. Big shout out to NordVPN for keeping us protected. With update 7.0.5, we have seen a number of our weapons get a hefty buff. At the top end, we have our auto rifles, which made us re-review Quicksilver Storm, and let me just say, Quicksilver is cooking inside of PvE. But another weapon type that also received a hefty buff was pulse rifles. Today, guys, we're going to be revisiting an old build of ours, but with Lightfall system. This was one of the most potent builds we have ever had, with one of the most powerful synergies in the game. And in this sandbox, it continues to dominate. So without further ado, here's our Falcon Leach 2.0 build. Now, as far as your super abilities and aspects go, nothing has really changed from our previous build. We're still rocking Deadfall, still using the suppressor grenade, and still taking advantage of Gambler's Dodge. Now, the weapon of choice that we're going to be utilizing is, of course, Collective Obligation. And the beautiful thing here is the synergy. There's almost no need to ever physically reload Collective Obligation with this build with how this gun works. That's why we're using Gambler's Dodge. Now, our suppressor grenade is what we're utilizing to leech suppress off of our enemies. Vanishing Step and Stylus Executioner are our aspects. Vanishing Step gives us invis on dodge. And again, not necessarily needed, but it's helpful. And of course, it gives us 2 fragment slots versus the single slot we get from Trapper's Ambush. Then we have Stylus Executioner, which also gives us 2 fragment slots. But more importantly, it's the main gear that keeps this machine of a build running, as defeating a weakened, suppressed, or volatile target grants invisibility and true sight. And with this build, every enemy will be weakened, suppressed, and volatile all at once. Now for our fragments, we've made a few changes. We've taken away Echo of Instability, which gave our void weapons volatile rounds when we defeat targets with grenades. We don't think you really need this anymore, especially this season considering we have an artifact perk like Volatile Flow. Even more so, you don't need this because we're rocking Gyrfalcons. We'll be getting volatile rounds every time we come out of Invis and every time we pick up an orb. So we actually subbed in Echo of Instability for one of our new fragments, Echo of Cessation. Now this causes finisher final blows to create a burst of void damage that causes nearby combatants to become volatile, which of course happens to synergize with Gyrfalcon's finisher related perk. More importantly though, with this fragment equipped, we'll be generating void breaches when defeating volatile targets. We also have Echo of Harvest, where defeating a weakened enemy with precision damage spawns a void breach and an orb of power. So now defeating a weakened enemy with precision damage and defeating a volatile enemy will both spawn void breaches. And when you have a gun that is always dealing weakened and volatile at the same time, you've got essentially an endless supply of them. Now we also got Echo of Starvation, adding to our synergy. So now that when we pick up those orbs of power or void breaches, we get Devour. Devour of course restores us to full health and grant grenade energy, and final blows while Devour is active will extend its duration. So those 3 fragments all work together in tandem perfectly. Our 4th fragment is Echo of Undermining, which will make our suppressor grenades also weaken enemies, making it easier to spread all 3 debuffs, which is the goal here, guys. Now all you need to do is just dodge to go invis, throw your suppressor grenade at some enemies. This will take you out of invis, and you'll get volatile rounds for Collective Obligation from Gyrfalcons. Now the grenade will cause weaken and suppress, and collective will cause volatile. And boom, just like that, guys, we have 3 debuffs out on the battlefield for you to suck up into Collective Obligation and spread wherever you want. Now we're gonna get more into the gameplay loop at the end here, but first, I really want us to break down Collective Obligation and Gyrfalcon's Hauberk. Now Collective Obligation comes with the trait Void Leach, where the weapon leeches void debuffs when damaging targets that are suppressed, weakened, or volatile. Now once charged, you can switch firing modes. Now in this mode, damage from the weapon applies the same void debuffs that were leech. So essentially here, with some practice, you can easily use this exotic trait to endlessly chain all 3 debuffs as long as there's enemies to shoot. Now here's how that works. When you shoot a debuff enemy with Collective Obligation, it leeches every debuff tied to that enemy or group of enemies that you shoot. You can also keep track of the debuffs on the physical model of the gun, as these little purple circles will fill up as you leech each debuff. Now when the weapon becomes charged, it will say on the left side of the screen, Void Leech Charge, to which you can then switch to in its alternate firing mode, which will make Collective Obligation's bullets apply all the debuffs that you leech to every enemy that you shoot within a 15-second time period. Now once the time is almost up, you want to shoot an enemy without killing it to essentially store all the debuffs. That way, when the time does run out, you can shoot that enemy instantly and get all the debuffs back, proccing Void Leech yet again and having another 15 seconds to spread those debuffs. And this allows you to endlessly chain Weaken, Suppress, and Volatile everywhere you go. And you can see the benefits here, guys, of having all 3 of these up. Collective also comes with the perk Umbral Sustenance, where it gets an automatic reload when you gain Devour, as well as an Overshield or go invisible. And considering all 3 of these are happening with this build, you're likely never going to have to manually reload this gun. I also want to point out that Collective gets a 20% increase in damage and PvE when in its Void Leech mode. This isn't stated anywhere in the game, but it was part of an update that Collective got at the start of Season of Plunder in an effort to buff the gun overall. Tack that on with the 20% damage buff given to all pulse rifles, Collective is doing nasty damage. The only downside is, well, RNG with the roll can be pretty punishing. By the way, this weapon drops from the Vow the Disciple raid for my new players. Very good raid, by the way. Now jumping to Gyrfalcon's Hauberk. Now this exotic got substantially changed since the last version of this build. Our previous Falcon's Leech build had the old Gyrfalcon, the one that gave your weapons a 35% damage boost when coming out of Invis. The current version of Gyrfalcon's has that 35% boost still, but it requires getting a finisher while invisible to proc, and is much less potent as it has a very short duration that is cut even shorter because you have to wait for the finisher animation to end to actually shoot your weapons. What Gyrfalcon's is really known for today is volatile rounds, which is applied every time you come out of Invis. The perk called See Me, Feel Me states that your void weapons gain volatile rounds after you emerge from being invisible. Now, when you're invisible and you defeat a combatant while using a finisher, all of your weapons gain bonus damage. You and your nearby allies also gain a reserve overshield and improved class ability regeneration. It's actually a really good exotic for teams and things like Grandmaster Nightfalls. Now, these reserve overshields can be deployed by simply using your class ability, and this essentially leads to unlimited volatile rounds when combined with Stylus Executioner and utilizing debuffs, because killing a debuff target will make you go invisible thanks to Stylus Executioner, and shooting your void weapons takes you out of Invis, which gives you volatile rounds thanks to Gyrfalcon's, and then those volatile rounds cause the volatile debuff, which will restart the loop by turning you invisible. It's a beautiful loop. Now, to make this even easier, Vanishing Step will force Invis, thus giving you volatile rounds, and that's really all you need to do. It's literally free volatile. But before we move on, I do want to talk about the finisher perk on Gyrfalcon's. There's currently what seems to be a bug going on that I think is worth it at least to bring up. Typically, how the perk works is that when you get a finisher while invisible, you'll gain a significant improvement to class ability regeneration, as well as a reserve overshield that you can hold on to. This shows up on the left side of the screen. Now, this reserve overshield will be applied to you when you use your class ability next, and the improved class ability regeneration will ensure that you have your dodge back in about 4 seconds. It's very quick. But there's a weird interaction that takes place if you go invis and perform a finisher immediately after. What happens is you don't get the improved class ability regeneration, but the reserve overshield is applied to you instantly. Now, this can be a good thing because if you're doing a finisher, sometimes it's in the midst of a group of enemies, and knowing that this bug exists, you can actually dodge to go invis right before you go up and get a finish off, and you'll instantly get the protection of that overshield. Granted, I know we have mods like Proximity Ward, which also gives you an overshield, but this is still a feature, whether intentional or not, that you could take advantage of. Now, I know running around finishing enemies may not be the gameplay that you're seeking, but with Echo Cessation, that volatile burst that you get on finishers is so nice, dipping into our overall synergy even more. Now, moving on to our artifact perks. You'll need authorized mods, grenades, and authorized mods, void. Now, volatile float isn't needed, but you might as well have it, guys. This is still going to be a good build even next season. Bricks from Beyond is also too good to not have, but let's go for armor mods. Now, in our helmet, we have a void siphon mod. Now, you can actually double up here, guys. This will give you a heftier orb, but it doesn't give you multiple orbs. But essentially, this will spawn on rapid collective kills. I'm also taking advantage of heavy ammo finder. Considering that we have bricks from Beyond, you'll be just fine. In our gloves, we're rocking 2 bolstering detonation mods for class ability regeneration when we cause damage with a grenade. We also have impact induction for reduced grenade cooldown after causing damage with with a melee. Now you can use whatever you want for your chest piece, just throw on some resist mods. In our boots though, we are rocking Void Surge mods, and 3 of those. This will give Collective Obligation a 22% increase in damage when we have armor charges. Now this 22% stacks with everything. It stacks with the 20% buff you get while using Void Leach, on top of the 20% buff you get from the blanket buff to pulse rifles. And if you happen to be utilizing finishers, the 35% damage boost that Gyrfalcon provides after finishing an enemy while in biz also stacks with Void Surge. Although keep in mind guys, that boost in damage only lasts for a couple seconds. Then in our class item, we have Bomber to reduce grenade cooldown when using our class ability, Time Dilation, so that our armor charges have a longer duration. And we're also taking advantage of Reaper, which will generate an orb on our next weapon kill after using our class ability. Now do note that this build is completely focused on buffing Collective Obligation. Since using this gun, it's what's actively spreading debuffs, and that's pretty much the entire point of this build. You're gonna be firing Collective Obligation basically non-stop. So buffing its damage through the roof just makes sense here. And considering the buffs that have been applied here to pulse rifles, that's what we're trying to take advantage of. Now the main stats you do want to focus on here guys is of course resilience and discipline. Having that high resilience is always nice, especially in Grandmaster content. Now as far as the gameplay loop goes, we've pretty much already covered it, but you'll want to dodge to go invisible, then throw your suppressor grenade at some enemies. This will take you out of invis, granting Collective Obligation. It's volatile rounds thanks to Gyrfalcons. The grenade will cause weaken and suppress, and shooting those enemies with collective will cause volatile. This will charge Void Leach with all 3 debuffs, allowing you to switch firing modes, granting you the ability to spread weaken, suppress, and volatile all at once to every enemy that you shoot, combined with that 20% increase in damage that collective gets with Void Leach. Now as you kill enemies, you'll be generating orbs from Harmonic Siphon, Reaper, and Echo of Harvest, all of which will grant you volatile rounds, devour, and a further 22% increase in damage for Collective Obligation. Now if you time things right, you can actually proc all 3 of these orb generators at once off of a single enemy, generating 3 orbs at the same time. Now if you use your smoke bomb to weaken an enemy, then use collective to get a kill, dodge, and then quickly kill the weakened enemy with a precision shot. Harmonic Siphon, Reaper, and Echo of Harvest will all proc at once, resulting in 3 orbs and 1 Void Breach from that enemy. Now again guys, you don't have to do this 100% of the time. We're just letting you know it's possible. Also, you don't even have to go for all 3 debuffs. Like if you're looking to crank up Collective Obligation, you don't need all 3. With that being said though, having all 3 is very nice. Like suppression alone is OP inside of PvE. Now don't forget, throughout all of this, you're going to be spawning Void Breaches when you defeat a volatile target, and when you defeat a weakened target with a precision final blow. And all of those Void Breaches with Lightfall grant you class ability energy, and they also give you Devour. And as long as you're able to chain debuffs together using the method that we talked about earlier, you really won't ever have to worry about dodging to go invis to proc volatile rounds, because Stylus Executioner will give you invis constantly. You won't need your suppressor grenade to weaken and suppress, because you're going to constantly have collective with those debuffs. But we also have a few mods that cut down on ability cooldowns, just in case you do lose those debuffs. Impact Induction, Bolstering Detonation, and of course our Bomber mods. Now if you find yourself stuck in a group of enemies, going invis and then using a finisher instantly will then of course hit that overshield from Gyrfalcons due to whatever bug that may be, and cause that volatile burst thanks to Echo of Cessation, which will help you clear that group of enemies, or at least give you time to escape. Now as far as champions go, this season we have Anti-Barrier Pulse. You can stun barrier champions with Collective Obligation in its base form, but with volatile rounds you could stun barrier champions, and with suppression you can stun overload champions. Now keep in mind, the way this works with Collective Obligation isn't as overpowered as you would think. Put simply, suppression will always trump volatile rounds. So if you have both suppression and volatile leech, you'll only be able to stun overload champions. You won't be able to stun barrier champions, as weapons that have an existing or active champion counter are unable to pierce and stun barrier champions. And this is actually pulled from Court's champion counter guide. Again, some issues here with overlap. Honestly, I wish Bungie would just allow it to just stun all champions, even if you have multiple verbs being applied to a weapon. Outside of weapons that do like intrinsic stuns, like Leviathan's Breath and Unstoppable, Ariana's Vow, and barriers, I think when it comes to weapons like Collective Obligation, Bungie should just let it ride. With that being said though guys, this is a fantastic build. It's gotten even better with Lightfall, and then it got even better with the Pulse Rifle buff. If you have a Collective Obligation, give it a go. And if you're interested in this build directly, down below will be a link to it. Well fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching, and as always, slap that like button like your mama told you right.